The church is beautifully decorated for the wedding. Guests are seated, looking elegant. The groom stands at the altar, smiling, surrounded by well-dressed guests. The choir sings, and cameras flash from every angle, capturing the moment. Everything seems perfect until the bride is suddenly missing. The groom's smile starts to fade. He begins to feel uneasy, his eyes darting to the door. His face turns pale as he waits. The doors suddenly swing open. A woman walks through the doors, dressed in a wedding dress. She moves toward the front, and the crowd goes silent. Sarah Ford, the wife he thought he killed a year ago. 1 year ago, he thought he buried her. But now she stood at the very place he thought he was going to start over. Don't forget to subscribe for daily updates on the latest true crime stories. Pastor John Ford grew up in a humble, religious household, where he learned the value of hard work and the importance of faith. His family didn't have much, but they had each other, and their faith kept them going. John's early life was marked by sacrifice. He worked long hours to help support his family and found strength in his belief. But beneath the surface, there were insecurities that haunted him. He often doubted his worth and feared that he'd never measure up to others. Despite his challenges, John's charisma and passion for preaching led him to a life of ministry. As he got older, his natural gift for speaking became evident. His ability to connect with people, make them feel heard, and inspire them with his words allowed him to rise quickly in the religious community. Soon, he was known as Pastor John Ford, a preacher with a growing congregation and a reputation for delivering powerful, uplifting sermons. To the world, John was a model of faith and success. His sermons brought in crowds, and he built a reputation for being a man of purpose. He had everything: a growing ministry, loyal followers, and respect from those around him. He was the perfect example of someone who had achieved success through hard work and faith. But despite the outward appearance, there was a darker side to John's personality. His private struggles began to clash with his public image. John's ego grew as his ministry expanded. He began to crave control, not just over his ministry but over every aspect of his life, including his marriage. His need for perfection led him to be controlling and demanding, especially towards Sarah. She began to feel trapped, suffocated by his rising fame and expectations. The man she had married, the man she had once looked up to, was no longer the same. As John became more absorbed in his public persona, Sarah started questioning the man she had once loved. The seeds of betrayal were planted as she struggled with the reality of being married to someone who was no longer the man she thought he was. John's rise to fame had led him to lose sight of everything that once mattered. And for Sarah, it became clear: the man who preached about love and grace no longer had either to offer. Sarah Ford grew up in Detroit, raised by a hard-working mother who had to juggle multiple jobs to make ends meet. Her father wasn't around, and she learned from a young age to carry the weight of responsibility that most kids her age couldn't imagine. Her mother, though tired and stretched thin, always found time to take Sarah to church. It was there, in the warmth of faith and community, that Sarah found solace. Her belief in God became her anchor, the one constant that helped her navigate the hardships of growing up in a broken home. Sarah was a fighter, strong-willed and determined to make the best of her situation. She didn't ask for help, didn't wait for applause. She just kept pushing forward, focused on the future. Despite the struggles, she built a sense of independence, believing that faith and hard work would carry her through life's toughest challenges. It was in church that Sarah met John Ford. From the very first moment, she was captivated by his charm, his energy, and his vision. He had a way of making her feel special, like she was exactly where she needed to be. His charisma was magnetic, and Sarah couldn't help but fall in love with him. He seemed like the perfect man, the kind of person she had always hoped to find. His passion for faith matched her own, and she saw in him a partner who could build something meaningful together. John promised her a future filled with purpose and love, and for a while, it felt like a dream come true. They married quickly, and in the early days, their relationship was a fairy tale. John was kind, attentive, and supportive. He made Sarah feel seen, cherished. But as their marriage progressed, Sarah began to notice cracks forming in the facade. John's need for control grew stronger, and as his ministry flourished, so did his insecurities. At first, it was subtle, small moments where he would make decisions for her without asking, or where his praise would quickly turn to criticism. Over time, his controlling tendencies became more pronounced. Sarah felt isolated, cut off from the life she once envisioned. The man she had married was no longer the same, and she found herself trapped in a relationship that no longer felt safe. Her faith, which had once been her refuge, now felt like it was being used against her. Sarah, despite her strength, found herself vulnerable. She had believed in John's vision, in their future together, but as the years passed, the weight of his demands crushed her spirit. She began to question everything. What had happened to the man who once made her feel so loved? What happened to the future she had dreamed of? Slowly, the fairy tale she had imagined unraveled, and the reality of the life she was living became harder and harder to ignore. After years of emotional and physical abuse, Sarah reaches her breaking point. She decides she can no longer live under John's oppressive control and begins making plans to leave him. She quietly prepares, searching for a way out. John, sensing that something is wrong, becomes increasingly paranoid and controlling. His worst fear, losing everything he's worked so hard to build, begins to consume him. Losing Sarah would ruin his carefully constructed public persona. His ego can't bear the thought of being anything less than the perfect pastor, the perfect husband. Fearing that Sarah might expose him or leave him for good, John decides to take drastic measures to eliminate her. He can't afford to let her go. He convinces himself that the only way to preserve his life as he knows it is to make her disappear. John lures Sarah to a secluded spot, promising her a weekend getaway, a trip that will help them reconnect and heal their troubled relationship. He promises her that they can start fresh. She, desperately clinging to the hope that things might still be salvageable, agrees to go with him. Once they arrive at the remote location, the atmosphere shifts. John's demeanor changes from calm to cold and calculating. The peaceful retreat he promised turns into something far more sinister. Under the guise of reconciliation, he attacks her. A brutal altercation ensues, one that ends with John believing that he has finally silenced her for good. In a panic, he drags her unconscious body to a nearby grave-like spot. He makes sure to bury her out of sight, trying to cover his tracks as best as he can. He believes he's rid of her, convinced that his crime will remain hidden and that his perfect image will remain intact. He returns to Atlanta, his demeanor cool and composed, as if nothing has changed. John returns to church, where he begins the process of mourning Sarah's loss. The news spreads quickly. Sarah has gone missing. The police launch an investigation, but they quickly hit a dead end. No evidence, no body, no suspects. John plays the role of the grieving husband perfectly. He even stages a public prayer vigil, drawing in the community and making sure to publicly mourn her loss. Behind the scenes, John breathes a sigh of relief. His perfect life is intact for now. But as the investigation fizzles out, he continues to build his reputation as a man of faith, a survivor of tragedy. His church community rallies behind him, offering support and sympathy. He becomes the face of the broken-hearted widower, pouring his emotions into his sermons, making his grief a centerpiece of his ministry. John's life goes on as if nothing happened. The church grows larger, his influence stronger, and he thrives as a symbol of strength and faith. But beneath the surface, his guilt gnaws at him, a secret he hides behind his public facade. What John doesn't know is that the woman he thought he buried isn't gone at all. She's alive, and in time, she will come back to expose the truth, and nothing will ever be the same. After John believes he has killed her, Sarah miraculously survives the attack. Severely injured, bruised, and bleeding, she is left for dead in a remote area, buried in a shallow grave. The harsh reality of her situation sets in, but Sarah, driven by sheer will to survive, refuses to give up. With unimaginable strength, she struggles to free herself from the dirt, crawling through the earth with a painful determination. Her body is battered, but her spirit remains unbroken. She drags herself through the wilderness, her injuries making each movement excruciating. At times, she collapses from the pain, but she forces herself to keep going, driven by the thought that John cannot get away with what he's done. By sheer luck, a couple out hiking in the area hears her faint cries for help. They find her, barely conscious, her body bruised and broken. The couple quickly takes action, calling emergency services and providing immediate aid. Paramedics arrive, and Sarah is rushed to a nearby hospital, her body fragile but holding on to life. Once Sarah is stabilized in the hospital, her healing process begins. Her body is shattered, but she holds on to hope. While she is physically recovering, her mind starts to piece together everything that happened. She knows she can't let this go. She must find a way to expose John and bring him to justice. But she also knows that she needs to be careful. John's power, his influence, could make it easy for him to manipulate the truth once again. During her stay in the hospital, Sarah refuses to accept that this will be the end of her. While the doctors work to repair her physical injuries, she begins to mentally and emotionally prepare herself for the fight ahead. Sarah is no longer the woman she was before. Her survival has transformed her into something else. A woman who is determined to find the truth and hold the man who wronged her accountable. She will no longer be a victim. She will be the one who takes control. She's placed in a safe house, under the protection of federal agents who are informed about her case. She stays hidden, keeping to herself as she slowly regains her strength. The world believes she is dead, but in the silence of her new life, Sarah begins to rebuild herself. As Sarah's physical wounds heal, she turns her focus to exposing John. The pain of her betrayal fuels her every move, and her drive for justice becomes all-consuming. She knows the only way to truly bring John to justice is by gathering undeniable evidence that will expose him for the manipulator and abuser he truly is. Sarah starts documenting everything: the receipts, photos, and videos. She carefully collects all the evidence she can find, knowing that every piece of information will bring her one step closer to the truth. She also gathers records of John's activities, his lavish lifestyle, the evidence of his financial dealings, and his interactions with people close to her. She reaches out to those who may have been witnesses to John's behaviors, finding people who can corroborate the darker side of his personality. In her quiet determination, she uncovers secrets buried deep beneath the surface. It's not just about exposing his crime. It's about showing the world who he really is. She learns to use the tools at her disposal, keeping everything secure in a hidden drive, while continuing to stay low. But as Sarah plans her next moves, she starts to wrestle with the emotional toll of what she's doing. The act of seeking revenge against the man she once loved brings a complicated wave of emotions. She struggles with forgiveness, but she knows that if justice is going to be served, she has to push through the pain and hold on to the truth. Every piece of evidence she collects takes her one step closer to exposing the man who tried to bury her, both literally and metaphorically. With the knowledge that she's about to turn John's world upside down, Sarah continues her preparations, determined to make sure he never gets away with it. 1 year after Sarah's disappearance, John Ford's life has moved forward in the public eye. The church, which had once been a modest ministry, has grown into a sprawling empire, with a congregation that includes the city's elite. John's name is now synonymous with prosperity, faith, and success. He's become a household name, known for his passionate sermons and his ability to draw crowds, with his personal life always making headlines. In the wake of Sarah's supposed death, John has managed to rebrand himself as a heartbroken widower, using his grief as a powerful narrative in his ministry. He continues to preach about the blessings of God, his life a picture of divine favor. To the outside world, he has it all: money, influence, and now a new woman by his side. Rebecca, a beautiful and well-liked woman from his congregation, has become his new partner. Their relationship is the talk of the town, and John announces their upcoming wedding, which quickly becomes a media sensation. The announcement is everywhere: news outlets, social media, and billboards across the city. To the public, this wedding represents a fresh start for a man who has overcome personal tragedy. But what they don't know is that behind closed doors, John's life is built on lies, and the truth about Sarah is still waiting to be revealed. The wedding day arrives, and the church is filled with lavish decorations, towering floral arrangements, and glittering chandeliers. Hundreds of guests, including celebrities, politicians, and church members, are seated in the pews, waiting for the ceremony to begin. The air is thick with anticipation. Cameras flash as Rebecca walks down the aisle, her smile bright and full of promise. The choir's voices soar in song, filling the church with hymns of joy. John stands at the altar, his smile wide, his demeanor calm and composed, perfectly playing the role of the perfect groom. He looks every bit the part of the man who has everything: his ministry, his new wife, his perfect life. The officiant begins the ceremony, reciting the words of unity and love. The guests listen intently. The moment feels magical, and the sense of triumph in the air is palpable. Everything is going according to plan. However, the absence of Sarah is not lost on the few people who knew her, and their eyes wander nervously, as if something doesn't quite feel right. John seems unbothered, as though the wedding is a celebration of what has been and what is yet to come. Just as the officiant reaches the part of the ceremony where he asks, "If anyone has a reason why these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace." The doors at the back of the church swing open with force, startling the guests. The music cuts off, and a chill fills the room. All eyes turn toward the entrance, where a figure stands in the doorway. Sarah Ford. Dressed in a simple yet stunning wedding gown, she steps forward into the church, her gaze steady and unwavering. The guests freeze in shock. The room goes silent, save for the gasps and whispers that ripple through the crowd. The groom, John, stands frozen at the altar, his face drained of color. He can't believe his eyes. He thought he had buried her, gotten away with it. Rebecca, the bride, is left speechless, her smile fading as she looks at Sarah, unsure of what to do. Sarah steps forward, slowly, calmly, holding the microphone that is left abandoned by the officiant. She faces John, her expression not of anger, but of cold resolve. With the eyes of the entire congregation on her, she speaks, her voice clear and strong. "Before you say, 'I do,' Pastor, shall we show them the footage?" The room falls into stunned silence. The guests are in shock, unsure if this is some sort of joke, a performance. But it's not. It's the truth. As Sarah's words hang in the air, the lights dim in the church, and a video begins to play on the large screen behind the altar. Once, he thought he had buried her, but now, she stood before him, revealing the truth he never thought would come to light. A man of faith, a man of lies, a man about to lose everything. This moment will forever change their lives, and the world will soon know the truth of what happened that fateful day. A betrayal that goes far beyond just one woman's life. The shocking revelation is just beginning. As the church falls silent, Sarah stands in front of the stunned guests, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the chaos that surrounds her. She holds the microphone firmly in her hand and looks directly at John, who stands frozen, a mixture of disbelief and panic washing over him. With a steady breath, she speaks, her voice clear and unwavering. "You thought you had buried me, John, but you were wrong." The room is filled with a heavy silence as everyone waits for her to explain. Sarah doesn't waste any time. She goes on to calmly recount the moment she was attacked, describing how John lured her to the secluded location, the attack, and how he truly believed she was dead. She speaks of the grave he dug for her and how he left her for dead, thinking he had rid himself of her once and for all. Her words hang in the air, chilling the room with their quiet intensity. "I was left to die," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I didn't." The room is on edge, anticipating what comes next. Sarah looks over at the large projector screen, and with a single nod, the footage begins to play. The screen flickers to life. The audience watches, captivated and horrified, as the black and white footage from the hidden camera unfolds. It shows John dragging Sarah's lifeless body through the dirt, his movements trembling. "You said, 'No one will know.'" Sarah's voice echoes in the background as the video plays. "God forgive me." The footage continues to show John adjusting her purse, removing her wedding ring, and wiping the handle of his car door. He drives away without a second glance, believing he has succeeded in his plan. The video is raw, unfiltered, and damning. The cold, calculated nature of John's actions is laid bare for everyone to see. As the video plays, the guests sit in stunned silence, their expressions frozen in disbelief. The groom, John, stands motionless at the altar, his eyes wide, unable to process what is unfolding before him. The guests, who had once viewed John as a man of faith and righteousness, now see him for what he truly is, a man who has lived a life of lies and betrayal. Their disbelief turns into murmurs, then shocked whispers, as they turn to one another, trying to make sense of the impossible truth that has just been revealed. The video is streamed live to millions of viewers, and the online response is immediate. Social media explodes with hashtags, comments, and messages of disbelief. People from around the world watch as John's carefully crafted public persona crumbles before their eyes. The church, once filled with followers, now feels like a house of cards, and it's clear that everything is about to fall apart. John tries to speak, to deny what they've seen, but the evidence is irrefutable. He stammers, his voice shaky as he pleads, "This isn't what it looks like. It's a setup. I didn't." But it's too late. The damage is done. The truth is out, and there is no way for John to escape the consequences of his actions. With the chaos of the room now fully palpable, Sarah stands tall, her hands clasped in front of her, unwavering. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't break down in tears. She remains composed and calm. "I survived," she says, looking around the room, "and I refuse to stay silent anymore." She pauses, her gaze shifting from the audience to John. "I didn't just survive the attack. I survived the man you thought I would become, the woman you tried to bury. And now, I'm standing here, telling the truth, because the truth deserves to be heard." Sarah turns to face the audience, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. "I'm not here to seek revenge. I'm here because I deserve justice. I'm here because every victim of abuse deserves their voice." As her words settle in the room, the tension becomes palpable. The weight of her statement fills the air, as the truth continues to sink in for both the church and the millions watching from home. For Sarah, this moment isn't just about revealing what happened to her. It's about standing up for every person who has ever been silenced, manipulated, or controlled. She has found her voice, and in doing so, she has become a symbol of resilience and truth. The room remains silent as she takes a breath and steps away from the microphone, her statement complete. The moment feels heavy, but it is also liberating, both for Sarah and the audience who have been witnesses to her courage and strength. The cameras flash, the whispers grow louder, and the truth has now been revealed. Sarah Ford is no longer the woman who was buried alive. She is the woman who stood up, and through her, the truth will be heard by the world. As Sarah's words hang in the air, the tension in the room reaches its peak. John, still standing at the altar, is frozen in shock, his face pale and stricken with disbelief. His mind races, trying to figure out a way out, to somehow escape the consequences that are now closing in on him. His eyes dart around the room, and for a moment, it seems like he might bolt, desperate to run from the truth that is crushing him. Suddenly, the heavy church doors swing open again, this time, not to a figure of revelation, but to the sharp, unmistakable sound of armed police officers flooding the room. With loud, commanding voices, SWAT teams rush into the church, their weapons drawn, hands motioning for everyone to stay back. John doesn't even have time to process what's happening before officers are upon him, grabbing him by the arms and forcing him to the ground. His tailored suit is torn as he struggles, his disbelief turning to desperation. No, you don't understand. This is a mistake. I didn't." John pleads, but his voice is drowned out by the sound of handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists. The once charming pastor, the man who had built a life of power and influence, is now a criminal in the eyes of the world. His arrogant, self-assured demeanor from earlier is now replaced with panic, his body jerking as he's hauled away by the authorities. The cameras keep rolling, capturing every moment of John's fall from grace. The public persona that had once made him a beloved figure, admired by thousands, now crumbles before millions of viewers watching live. John's face is flushed with embarrassment, his mind overwhelmed with the truth of his situation. He tries to maintain some semblance of control, but his words falter, his usual charisma gone. He looks up at the audience, the people he once preached to, but there is no sympathy in their eyes, only shock, confusion, and disgust. The guests who had once admired him now watch in stunned silence as the man they had followed for so long is taken away in disgrace. His once thriving ministry, which had grown rapidly under his leadership, now lies in ruins. The church he had built with such pride is abandoned, and the members who had worshipped at his feet begin to question everything they had believed in. The high-end lifestyle he had flaunted, luxurious cars, expensive clothes, and lavish homes, begins to unravel as his assets are frozen and seized by authorities. The multi-million-dollar donations, the influencer partnerships, the sponsorships, all of it fades into the background as his criminal charges take center stage. As the media swarm around him, the whispers grow louder, and it's clear that John's empire has collapsed in a matter of moments. The life he had worked so hard to create is gone, replaced by a tarnished reputation that no amount of money or fame can restore. The man who once stood at the altar professing faith and forgiveness was now shackled in disgrace. As the camera zooms in on John's face, his expression a mixture of disbelief, regret, and fear, the words ring out in the background. He is no longer the charismatic preacher or the man who once claimed to be an example of God's grace. Now, he is just another man facing the consequences of his actions. His legacy of lies and manipulation is on full display for the world to see. John's arrest marks the beginning of the end. His rise to fame and wealth, once built on deception, is now replaced with the cold reality of the justice system. He may have once believed that he could outsmart the truth, but now the truth has caught up to him and there is no escape. After the trial and the chaos that followed, Sarah's life is placed under a new kind of protection, witness protection. The media frenzy that once consumed her every move, the constant flashing of cameras, the aggressive threats from John's associates, all vanish into the background as she is relocated to a new, quiet place. Far from the public eye, Sarah begins the painful yet necessary process of rebuilding her life. The woman who once lived in constant fear, under the shadow of a man who controlled her every move, now finds solace in her newfound anonymity. The weight of the past still lingers, but it no longer holds her captive. Slowly, she pieces together a new sense of self, learning to trust again, not just others, but herself. Her journey from victim to survivor is complete, but now, she steps into the shoes of a warrior, someone who didn't just survive, but fought back with an unwavering determination. Her actions, her decision to expose John's crimes, have given a voice to the truth that was once buried with her. Sarah no longer needs to hide who she is. She no longer has to suppress the pain of what happened to her, because in doing so, she has fought for justice, not just for herself, but for countless others who may never have had the courage to speak out. Though the scars from her past are still visible, Sarah begins to find peace in the quiet moments of her new life. Her journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. From a woman manipulated and controlled to a force that brought down a man who thought he could escape the truth. She reflects on her actions, on the risk she took by standing up, on the evidence she gathered, and on the strength it took to walk into that church on that fateful day. She remembers how she felt when she stood before the altar, when she took back control of her narrative. In the calm after the storm, Sarah knows one thing for certain: justice prevailed. She didn't just expose John for who he truly was. She gave a voice to the countless others who had suffered in silence. Her fight for justice is a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, truth can rise. Her strength, her courage, and her resilience became her ultimate weapon, and in the end, it was all worth it. What would you have done if you were in Sarah's shoes? Would you have had the courage to fight back, to speak the truth, and expose the darkness hiding in plain sight? Subscribe for more true crime stories that challenge our perception of justice, survival, and betrayal. Stories that are real, raw, and unforgettable.